What sends chills down a gamer's spine more than always online or day one DLC? That's right, movie tie-ins. Movie tie-in games have been historically some of the worst games to ever grace television screens worldwide. It all started back in the 8-bit days with the infamous LJN movie games. These atrocities are the granddaddies of bad movie tie-ins, and for the most part they don't get better. There are, however, some tolerable movie tie-in games out there, and some that people might actually be able to consider good. Take the SpongeBob movie game, for example. Sure, it was essentially a reskinned copy-pasta of the Battle for Bikini Bottom game, but that doesn't change the fact that it was competently put together, aesthetically pleasing, and enjoyable to play. This game proved that movie games can be fun if the right developer was behind it. But don't just take this game's word for it. Spider-Man 2. The Raimi Spider-Man films have about as many fans as they do detractors. I think 2004 Spider-Man 2 is one of the best superhero movies of this century. But I first saw it when I was 7 and didn't get to watch many action movies beforehand, so what the hell do I know? The game, on the other hand, is heralded as possibly the best movie tie-in game to ever be created. Treyarch, under the guidance of Activision, were responsible for putting the game together, and they got it out 2 days before the theatrical release of the movie. Much like the film was lauded at release, so was the movie tie-in game. Why exactly was that? I know I'm 2 years late, but let's find out. This is the 12th anniversary review for Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man does whatever.
Spider-Man 2 loosely follows the plot of the movie it was created to tie into, believe it or not. Some of the film's moments are omitted in the game, and some entirely unrelated events are added into the game to spice things up. For the purposes of this review, I will try to keep spoilers to a minimum, but be aware of possible spoilers at the following timestamps. Spider-Man 2 starts us out with beautiful, wide, sweeping establishing shots of New York City to Tobey Maguire's majestic voice. The first thing you'll notice is the decent quality of the game's textures. The game, for the most part, looks very good for a PS2 game. There are lots of repeated textures across the city, and very few pedestrian and enemy models, but the ones that are repeated at least look human. Once the opening is finished, you're met with the always condescending Bruce Campbell, ready to give you the tutorial from the game. From then on, you're along for the roller coaster ride. This game is open world, meaning that you're free to take your adventure to wherever Spider-Man will take you in New York City, which is basically everywhere except the ocean. Good job, Spider-Man. The charm in this game knows no bounds. It's aware it's in a silly world of masked villains and aliens. The creativity in this game is crazy. Take the Deadly Carnival, for example. What the hell? Not to mention the city itself. This game's map is huge. They managed to fit the entirety of Manhattan Island along with Ellis, Roosevelt, and even the Statue of Liberty. Then, there's the scattered hidden tokens, challenges, minigames, and random events to tide you over for hours. And this isn't even mentioning the core game. So, let's talk mechanics here. In Treyarch's first Spider-Man game, Spider-Man shot his web directly upwards into what can only be assumed is the sun. In Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man's web actually attaches to the physical buildings in the world. This can greatly affect your control while flying through the city. Lots of times you'll be swinging along and catch the wrong building and get caught in a little sliver of a wall that'll bring you to a screeching halt. This is an incredibly realistic way to program Spider-Man. You know, if you can call a young adult that shoots sticky white fluids out of his wrist to Tarzan his way through New York City realistic. You can also swing on light poles. Amazing. Spider-Man only has one attack button, which the game will make sure you don't forget.
Everyone looks at the controller and whines. There's only one attack button.
The way to get new attacks is to purchase them at Spidey stores, with skill points that you obtain by accomplishing anything in the game. Speaking of accomplishing anything in the game, to progress through the game's plot, you have to complete certain tasks to move on to a new chapter. This entails getting skill points, buying speed upgrades, and of course, completing plot missions. Sometimes, plot missions begin immediately as a chapter does, so if you want to screw around for a while, beware of the seamless transition. You can use your web in combat. You've got your web bullets and disarming techniques, but you've also got web hammers and web spin attacks that you can use to your advantage. You can even web multiple bad guys at a time, or leave defeated enemies hanging from street poles. Why would you want to do that? I don't know, but it's pretty funny. There's also a grapple command that allows you to carry undefeated enemies and torture them by various means. I can't tell you how satisfying it is to throw people into the ocean or off skyscrapers. Wait, I thought Spider-Man was a good guy. Now he's just going around throwing people off buildings. What in the hell? The game's fighting engine was designed extremely well. I think more action games should have modeled their fighting after Spider-Man 2. The combo system is neat, and when you do manage to pull off one of these combos, it tends to be a pretty spectacular display. I have exactly one problem with this game's combat, and I'll let bodybuilding Eminem show it to you. This here is what enemies like to do. They like to block every single attack. Pretty thrilling stuff here. Okay, I understand there needed to be some challenge. You are Spider-Man, who has strength beyond anything. Any mere mortal you attack, you would be able to eviscerate on your own. But blocking is just so incessant. There's virtually no way to break their blocks without using the web shotgun like this. I don't actually know the official term for this web attack, but it's the only reliable way to stop these guys from blocking you every single time. This wouldn't be a problem if you weren't usually facing off against a dozen assholes at a time. One-on-one, this is perfectly fine. But if you have to stop to web up one guy, you'll usually become overwhelmed. And sometimes this can be fatal. Take the army deserters, for example. These guys are normally the weakest to face off against and won't block your attacks ever. However, if any of them get in a single shot, you will probably never be able to stand up again. Spider-Man 2 uses Ragdoll Physics, so when you're hit, you'll sometimes be sent ragdolling. When this happens, you can't do anything until Spider-Man stands up again, which means these guys can get as many cheap shots in as it takes for you to stand. Then when you do stand, you're just knocked on your ass again. Wow, this is fair. Getting back to the whole blocking thing, I'd understand if normal attacks got blocked and using combos would break blocks. In fact, I think that would be an excellent system. But no. Even if you perform an attack sequence that should initiate a combo, if that bitch blocks, you won't be able to perform that combo. That is pretty stupid. Usually the way that I face off against blocking assholes is just jumping and attacking while in the air. More often than not, they won't block airborne attacks, so it's really the safest and quickest way to go about your business. There's one other annoying feature with enemies, and that is that they like to dodge your standard web attacks. Spidey will try to shoot a line of wrist jizz at one of these bitches, and it's almost guaranteed that they will dodge it. The web shotgun can't be dodged, and will even home in on the asshole that it targets, but it just isn't as fun as webbing them up the hard way, especially considering that you can just attack them a normal way now that they've been hit with a web shotgun. There are several different web upgrades for you to get, but you'll rarely use them since these guys like to dodge your web constantly. And I know what you're thinking. I bet you're thinking that instead of webbing someone while in combat, why not try sneaking up on them and webbing them up? Well, I've got news for you. Even if enemies haven't noticed you or they're fighting someone else entirely, they'll still dodge your webbing as if you're in the middle of the fight. Look at this. This guy has no idea I'm here. He isn't even facing me, and yet he's dodging my web lines. Are you kidding me? Unbelievable. So, plot missions. These are mostly adapted scenes from the film. The game adapts the bank robbery and subsequent train fight into great battles, and if this game was released today, these fights would be choreographed quick-time button mashers instead of free-floating like the way they are in this game. These aren't the only missions in the game, though. In fact, plot missions aren't even 20% of the core gameplay in Spider-Man 2. Whenever you're in free roam, which is literally the entire game, there will be random green and purple blips that pop up on the screen and the map. These are freelance jobs, essentially, that Spider-Man can partake in whenever he wants to. The purple ones are what New Yorkers like to call petty crimes. This involves purse thieves, random acts of violence, drunk drivers, and gang warfare? I think my favorite petty crime has to be the random rooftop robberies. Usually 4 bad guys will spawn on a rooftop for no reason, and at that point you have the green light to toss them off the building, usually to their deaths. Fun times. Oh, and there's one more petty crime that I've left out. Shut up, kid. The green icons are a bit more complicated. These missions require you to actually apply social skills and converse with some of New York's finest citizens and attempt to decipher whatever it is they're trying to tell you.
Heidi, look, that person is gonna fall.
Someone's about to blow? Is there a jihadist in the streets? These missions involve armored truck robberies, shootouts, aliens, people in giant mech suits terrorizing the streets, and even car theft. There are also hospital and falling people missions where you have to save someone in peril before the timer runs out. I've always thought that the falling people missions were the greatest thing. Once you retrieve the person, you have to set them down on the ground before the mission is complete. This is a manual task, so you could save this falling person and then turn around and swing across the entire city to somewhere completely foreign to that person you've saved. Could you imagine if this was real life and someone saved a random falling person and then just dropped them off in the most crime-ridden neighborhood in Brooklyn? Gee, thanks, Spidey. Another green screen icon mission is extremely rare, and throughout my 11 years of playing this game, I've only seen it twice. You see those green buildings scattered around the city? They seem completely useless until you stumble upon a green icon that tells you that the place is being held up. I'm not sure if there's some specific requirement for a green icon to trigger one of these missions, but I do remember that one of the times I was given this mission, it was right before dawn in the day-night cycle. I'm not entirely sure if that had anything to do with it or not. Point is that it's really rare and you'll probably never see it.
Something else that's really rare is sometimes armored car robbers will try to escape in a helicopter. In fact, this is so rare that I completely forgot about it until I was collecting footage for this review.
The last green icon mission is a sinking boat mission. They suck. First, you have to manage to reach the boat without falling in the water. Then, you have to get back to land without, once again, falling into the water. This is terrible. When you're carrying a person, you can't crawl on walls to save yourself from falling in water, and you can't even do your frickin' web zip to save yourself from falling into the water. If you do fall into the water while carrying someone, you're straight fucked. And if this isn't hard enough, sometimes they'll put the boat between one of the many buoys floating in the ocean. So you have to land on the minuscule floating beacon every time you want to go to the boat. That's ridiculously annoying. So yeah, those are the freelance missions. Woohoo! Another mission you'll find yourself doing possibly would include challenges. When you're flying around New York, sometimes you'll stumble upon floating inverted Cowboys logos. And these are challenges. Most of these are just races that you need to complete in a certain time to win, but others can be insane. Literally. Occasionally, you'll have to perform pole swings and finicky web orbits that rarely if ever work, all the while trying to keep under the time frame. There's over 100 of these, so you're in for quite the ride if you want to complete them all. Other floating circular icons appear around the city. The most common are hint tokens that literally just tell you how to play the game with riveting Bruce Campbell commentary. They mostly contain information that is useless after you've been playing the game for more than 20 minutes, but they do give you hero points, so that's nice. There's an arcade that exists to teach you the mechanics of the game. I'm not sure why people would pay to go to an arcade specifically designed to teach local superheroes how to string combos and dodge bullets, but it exists, I guess. The dodge hall game is no joke pretty awesome, because if you're good enough at dodging, you can essentially play this minigame forever. I've gotten over 200 in this game in the past, and I only quit because I got bored. But it can be quite the experience playing through dodge halls seemingly forever. Another set of minigames are the warehouse challenges. Once you purchase this at the upgrade shops, you can test yourself against waves of enemies. It's a fun area, until you get hit by a sniper, which takes away a fourth of your health. Speaking of snipers, the final time challenge in this area pins you against snipers. It's nearly impossible. If you screw up the sequence or go after the snipers in the wrong order, you won't win. I got extremely lucky and completed this challenge with less than half a second remaining on the timer. Crazy shit, dude. Alright, wow, I think that covers the entirety of Spider-Man 2's gameplay. As you can see, there is more than enough to keep you occupied, though I do have a few complaints. First of all, the blocking. It's just really annoying. Second of all, the plot is extremely short. Like, deceptively short. I've completed the plot to this game in just under 4 hours, which is pretty sad. Yes, I realize this is a movie game, and movies are short. And they even added characters into the game that weren't in the movie just so you have more things to do. But I really think the developers missed out on a prime opportunity to create a definitive Spider-Man game. The gameplay is magnificent, no doubt, but the plot is so short. It leaves so much to be desired. I think that Treyarch should have developed a spin-off or a spiritual successor to the Spider-Man 2 game and created a 20-plus hour story mode and filled it with all these mechanics and enemies and all that stuff. Beyond the story missions, this game is incredible to play and undoubtedly one of the best superhero games on PS2. The graphics are... they're about as good as Grand Theft Auto 3, if anything. New York is massive, like the game map is unbelievably huge, so it's understandable that the developers would have to go and repeat building skins and stuff like that throughout the city. And for what it's worth, they did a pretty good job of keeping the aesthetics interesting. It's the characters that I have problems with. There are so few character models and enemy models that sometimes you'll just find yourself facing against a clone squad everywhere you turn. It doesn't help that some enemies will no longer appear after you progress further into the game, unless you wander your way into a hideout, in which case any skin of an enemy can spawn. On top of this, the only people who are allowed to move their mouths are the ones in in-game cutscenes. When you talk to a green icon, I guess you just communicate telepathically or something. All jokes aside, this game did a pretty good job with what it had when it came to graphics. They just could have done a little bit better is all. So let's talk sound design. The city is definitely alive. While flying through the skies, you'll hear random car horns, people talking in the streets, and even cinematic orchestral music. Speaking of music, when you're in combat, different music plays. This is pretty intense stuff. Action sequence music in this game was performed by KMFDM. Yeah, that KMFDM. It's pretty legit. Punching and web jizzing only have one sound to them, so you'll be hearing them plenty of times. There's a problem with the sound that involves some have the same voice actor. That's annoying. At its core, the sound design is fine, but more could have been done for it. The biggest question is if the game is replayable, and I'd say absolutely. There's so much content to this game that it will easily take you over 40 hours to complete everything in this game. This includes the challenges, the multitude of hidden tokens, the secret hideouts you have to bust, and not to mention the short plot. On top of all this are the awards you can win. Awards are basically the to-do list of miscellaneous extras. It keeps track of all the missions you complete and the tokens you collect. And this isn't to mention starting entirely new playthroughs to enjoy the plot missions once again. The best part of this game to me is how enjoyable the experience is. I've replayed this game so many times I've lost track, and there isn't a single mission in this game that I dread. Except for the mech suits. Fuck the mech suits. This game is incredible. You could even call it spectacular. Fantastic. Oh wait, that's a different Marvel entity. How about amazing? Yeah, I love this game. Pick it up and give it a shot. And by shot, I mean a shot of Jizzweb. Okay, I'm done. I give Spider-Man 2 9 out of 10 for gameplay, 7 out of 10 for graphics, 7 out of 10 for sound, and 10 out of 10 for replayability. This is a very good game. But the time for redundancy is over. Now is the time for justice. But first, I gotta deliver some pizzas.